Ba-da-ba-bow. All right, Jake, we've got another Comics That Influence, episode 16, where we talk about the books and the artists and the comics and the art that just influences us to make comics, if not read and buy them as we can afford the time and the money. But today I am going to be going through this here. It looks like both of us, once again, are kind of matching each other. It's kind of weird but I do have a secret bonus in the back of this collection of the Art of Moebius. And you have over there How to Draw Comics comic. I have never seen that. Who put that together?
Souls and Publications.
But who's the artist?
It's John Byrne and John Romita. And so we might be seeing some stuff inside that we saw before, and we might be seeing some stuff that we haven't. So it's going to be it's going to be a thrill ride.
All right. So you want me to go first?
Well, I went first last time, so.
Oh yeah, that's right. Wow, you got a good memory too. All right, so I can honestly say this book is the original purchase that I made. So this is not a making a purchase and then selling it and then buying it back. I have a very eclectic, passionate collection of books that are all on a shelf inside my closet here in the studio. And in preparation for this episode, I just felt like I've got to start going through my Moebius stuff because my favorite comic book of all time is a Moebius comic. So,
come on.
With that being said, this is now, like I said in the past, I'm not trying to toe the comic book historian line. So, if I say something, please correct me down in the comments. I'm totally down for it. But Jean-Marc and Randy Lossifer were two individuals that brought Moebius to America. I even think they were heavily connected with Hollywood. And then that's when he started, Moebius started doing movie work. There are publications that were basically helping him, Moebius, translate his work and get it, into the American market. Which the end of the story is it was never really done well enough that he really took to the American market as he really, really should have. But this is not a comic book.
Can I bust in? You mentioned movies. Can you just preview some of the movies that Moebius artwork would have been used
Masters
for?
of the Universe, Alien is, I think, his biggest one, where he's working with Jodorowsky, Dan O'Bannon, Giger. There's a whole list of people. There's a great documentary about how Jodorowsky's Dune never makes it off the ground, but it leads into multiple inspired comic book projects. And I'm going to show off one of them in here between just Jodorowsky and Moebius, called Incal. But Dan O'Bannon and Moebius do, was it The Long Tomorrow, which ends up getting into the space where Blade Runner comes out of, or kind of leans into the kind of original. Willow, I think, is another one. But can you think of any others?
Well, what was he doing? Was he doing
storyboards, character designs, character design? Yep.
Yeah. Right. Okay. I did not know it.
Yeah. And he was in America for quite a long time. I think maybe on and off. This is 89. This book comes out, and I do remember purchasing it in 89 while I was in college. I think I was a sophomore in college. Now, the thing about it's got an introduction by George Lucas. he
Wow.
makes a connection with oh gosh, why am I blanking on him? He's in here. Damn it. I feel
A
embarrassed
movie
now.
guy?
Yeah, comics. He worked on this here. Where the heck is it? Oh my gosh.
So he
Darrow, Jeff
goes to.
Darrow, Jeff Darrow, Jeff Darrow, Jeff
Okay.
Darrow. Sorry.
Yeah, they have a lot. They
Where
have a
is
lot
it?
in common.
It's right here. It is. Here it is. I have this portfolio. This is
Hello.
the City of Fire.
Yeah,
So this
let's
is a
zoom into like a little
collaboration.
corner. Go ahead and zoom into a little
Yeah.
corner of that.
Yeah,
Whoa! You'll take
this is
that glare
that
away.
insane.
Wow.
That's that
So
insane Jeff Darrow.
that's where Jeff Darrow got it from. I mean,
No,
I
he
know
went
this
to
is a.
Paris and worked with Moebius.
Yeah, but Jeff Darrow has a lot of scenes like that. I mean, that's like a kind of thing you sometimes see in
This is a
Japanese books too,
collaboration.
where the "Where's
Yep.
Waldo" kind of a style, right?
Yeah. This is. This was like a. When I got to college, my professors immediately saw that I wanted to become a comic book artist or at least a fantasy illustrator and somewhere along those lines. And they were okay with it. They just asked me very politely to lock all that stuff up in a trunk, put it in a basement or an attic or a closet, and just learn to see, learn to draw, learn to paint, learn color, learn design, learn the basics. Then when you return to comics or fantasy illustration or what have you, you're going to be able to see things in a very specific light. And they were absolutely right. They were absolutely right. The thing about this book is it always gave me the feeling that I did not have to abandon one for the other. In other words, I didn't have to abandon fantasy art or art making as it is with comics and cartooning. And there always seems to be this stark contrast, less and less now as time goes on, and comics as well as like graffiti and cartoons, R-Crumb, have entered the gallery space. But this
Stop
book
right
was
there.
always
Stop right
sort of
there. No,
my. Go ahead.
go back. Go back. Go back. So
Oh, you
go
want me
back.
to?
Yeah. So I believe what we're looking at right there is the cover of Enthralling, which was the European version and the original version of Heavy Metal magazine, and that was a Moebius
Yes.
cover where he has like a monkey
Yes.
inside of a spacesuit. But it was that issue
Yep.
#1 of Metal Erlang.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, wow. I never saw that cover before because I
Yep.
have
June
issue #1.
1977. Yep. Yep.
Right.
Now,
Well,
when they
I have,
moved it to America, the covers were all done by somebody else, whether it was American or not.
yeah, there's a
They did not
robot. There's like
immediately
a
move cover. There's two robots
yeah,
fighting.
yeah, and it's like a really nice airbrush style. But and I think it was 78, so it was not too far after. But
Yes.
so
Yep.
I'm seeing on Moebius, that there's a lot of lettering and there's a lot of architectural art, and you can see the Jeff Darrow influence because his Jeff Darrow's storytelling goes up and down the sides of buildings and real busy metropolitan areas, and Moebius, some of his recurrent themes are these creatures, and also these shots with big open spaces too. There's Jimi Hendrix eating breakfast, and
Blowing his
Jimmy was
mind, man. Blowing his mind.
yeah, Jimmy was used a lot in cartooning. He was there's the scene in Ralph Bakshi's American Pop that has Jimi Hendrix playing in Purple Haze, but there's also a comic book of this like Western looking hero by Paul Galassi called Saber, and it looks just like
Yep.
Jimi Hendrix too. So he was definitely a muse for a lot of artists. Here's the black and white
This
European stuff.
is this is Airtight Garage. The Journeys of Jerry Cornelius, which is a character invented by Michael Moorcock. Elric
Uh-huh.
fan, Elric's name. But
Yeah. Right.
these inks are at the core of my desire to ink. There's just something. These inks are so well done. You don't need color, and that's what came across to me
And what do you
in
think
a
he was using
very,
for his
very.
line? Was he
Croquil,
using
steel
a
brush,
crocodile or a rapidograph? Yeah, really.
and
I
rapidograph. You get it down in here. The rapidograph is kind of in the wheels. Maybe. Um, I've seen
yeah,
him many, many times because there's a variable weight. You can see it really well here.
yeah.
Get it right in there. Get the glare
So
out,
maybe
but this
maybe
is
he
Jerry
goes
right here, Major
right. Yeah,
Gruber.
that's Moebius right now, right there. Those parallel hatching lines that are so neatly
Yeah, yeah,
made, horizontal. And
yeah,
you could also see the influence right after Moebius was Milo Manara in a very similar style, right?
yep.
It was another one
Inky
that was influenced.
Bilal, he did a lot more coloring. Um,
This
but
looks like
something
glam.
like
This
this.
looks like it's also like very 80s, like record covers,
Oh
David
yeah,
Bowie influence stuff. But yeah, he would have
yeah.
these. He loved the use of open space, right? And he had these characters with these
Yes, yes.
pterodactyls and stuff, and he would just use
Yeah.
like
So Arzak.
the right Arzak. I remember that was serialized in heavy metal and maybe also Epic magazine, right?
Yep.
But his interesting to see when he's doing a full book by himself, and to see his color palette, and I think it was a very 80s palette like that, and that's a pretty stark red right there, and he's airbrushing
Yeah.
down
Yep.
into pink and then putting the rest in there. That's very, very bright stuff. So there was also some heavy metal movie, right, used some of his stuff, correct?
Yeah. Now this was really cool. There was another guy we actually worked with in an artist in residence named Brad Holland, and he told a story that was very similar. What they say here is that these were all supplies that he had gotten from he was in Japan, I think. But he basically just got these supplies from like a local grocery store or what have you. Took it back to his hotel room and immediately started making work. When this individual, this famous illustrator named Brad Holland, had arrived in New York on a one-way ticket to bus, he ended up having a portfolio, went to all of the big agencies, started getting work, but was living in a hostel. And with some of the advance money, went and bought, you know, let's say subpar, crappy materials, but was able to make magic out of it. The same thing with Frank Frazetta. Frank Frazetta was notoriously using oil paints you would purchase as kits from a hardware store. So the point being is it's not the supplies, it's as much as it is the human that's manipulating them in order to get the kind of effects that you're after.
Yeah,
But the airbrushing is here.
I remember Elvis Costello once told a story about he went into a Sears and he saw a little guitar amp there. It was like a toy amp. It was like $25, and he brought it. And he loved the sound. He made a song out of it, put it on the record.
Yeah.
So you
Right.
never know if it really is the artist, not the supplies. You can
Right.
do that scene from Iron Man where you go to the Home Depot and just get all the stuff that you just have on hand, and it's really what you bring to it.
I like the glare. Looks like the crystals are shimmering with light. um,
Yeah,
but what I
I
just
mean,
want to,
a lot of big
I want
expanses.
to,
A lot of his big, big expanses. They kind of hit you differently in color because he has he'll end up with a lot of color on the page, and when it's white, you have that open feeling. But then when you make a commitment like, okay, this whole thing's gonna be orange, that you end up with a lot of color, there, and maybe it
and
has a different outcome.
and just like with Jack Kirby. Immediately when we respond to Jack Kirby as young people, it's very hard to accept him and his weirdo type of technique. We went through all of this when we did the first 20 issues of Commandy, but as you grow as an artist, you become more and more enthralled and in love with how Jack Kirby was able to make comics quickly with his own language, and that's what you're seeing. But Moebius, when he first got into the career of being a comic book artist, he did a guy by the name of Lieutenant Blueberry. He was not writing it; he was just the illustrator. Numerous novels or graphic novels, or what they be referred to now. But the mastering of his ink. It's just ridiculous of what he understood, kind of right from the get. Very few times do I believe somebody was born this way, and like Frazetta, Kirby, and Moebius, they definitely were just born with a natural sense of light and so on. But here's some neat self portraits of him. He has unfortunately passed away, I think, too early. He had a huge retrospect in Paris. I actually did everything I could to get there, but it wasn't the funds. It was my job and the timing and everything that hindered me to get to that show. But, it's just... he's a well you can go back to and just really get a charge out of and say, damn it, I got to get something at least close to this. I mean, once again, I see something like this and I go, okay, I got to start inking. And this is where I got to get into, and then this is where I got to go on my own. These little doodles, I've always loved these little doodles.
So was Moebius was not his real name, right?
Now, that was his sci-fi comics name, like for Arzak and Airtight Garage. Jean Giraud, Giruad, was his, his name, and it was, or Gear, Gir. He would sign kind of his like Western Blueberry art or something like illustration with. So here it is.
He was born in May 1938. The only child of a son. Dad was an insurance agent, and his mom worked at the agency. Parents divorced when he was 3. He was raised mainly by his grandparents in Fontenay-sous-Bois, and he was an introverted child. He found solace after World War II in a small theater where on the street where his mother lived, which provided an escape from the post-war Reconstruction era of France, playing an abundance of American B-movie westerns. And then he got put in the St. Nicholas boarding school, where he became acquainted with Belgian comics such as Tintin and Spirou. And at age 16, he began his only technical training, where he started producing Western comics, although it did not sit well with his teachers. Just the exact story you were telling us.
Yeah, exactly.
He befriended future comic artist Jean-Claude Mézières and Pat Mallet, and they had a shared passion for science fiction, westerns, and the Far West. In 1956, he left art school without graduating to visit his mother, who had married a Mexican in Mexico, and stayed there for 9 months. The experience of the Mexican desert, its particular endless blue skies and unending flat plains, enthralled him. And, between that and watching westerns on the silver screen, left an everlasting impression on him, easily recognizable in his works. When he got back to France, he started working for a Catholic publisher, Flores Press, who he was introduced to by Mézières. And in 1959, 1960, he was slated for military service in the French occupation zone of Germany. And then he went to Algeria. So he did his time in the service. And let's see. Yeah, and so, Algeria probably influenced him too. He's always had that kind of exotic kind of flavor, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So at 18, he started drawing his own Western comic, 2-page shorts, inspired by Morris, called Frank et Jeremy, for the magazine Far West, his first commercial sales. And the magazine. So they advised him to continue in that vein, and then he got tenured at that publisher from 1956 to 1958. And he was continuing to create realistically drawn Western comics. That's so funny.
So I have. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You're so going.
Yeah, so I'm just going. He's had a much longer, much earlier career than we knew about. His first comic work after military service was Blueberry. Was before Blueberry. Was a Western series called Jerry Spring, which he had modeled after The Road to Coronado. In 1962, he goes to work for Hachette, which is the famous magazine publisher, and he was doing a side project called Buffalo Bill. I mean, I'm not very familiar with his Western stuff. The stuff that you're showing me is the stuff I know about. Heavy Metal Magazine and Epic and all that. Right. He met Claudine Conin, an editorial researcher at Hachette, and they got married. Let's see. She called him a visionary. They had 2 children, Helene and Julien, born in 70 and 72. And Helene inherited her father's graphic talents and has carved out a career as a graphics artist in the animation industry, earning her a 2014 French civilian knighthood, the same her father received in 1985. And let's see. In 1963, all the way to 74, Giraud works for Pilote magazine. That's a long run. That's 11 years. And it said that Giraud he was accused of plagiarism in this period. I mean, he was definitely inspired, but he was doing stories like Thunder in the West, Mission to Mexico. I think those are the graphic novels that you were talking about. And, this very gritty kind of classic style. It says Lieutenant Blueberry character was based on the actor Jean-Paul Belmondo for Pilote. Later on, collaborated with Jodorowsky, as you said. He adapted Howard Hawks' 1959 Rio Bravo. And he was, I didn't know this. He was very, very involved in doing graphic versions of spaghetti westerns. Sergio Leone and Sam Peckinpah. And that brings you all the way through the 60s. It was Jodorowsky who introduced Moebius to the writings of Carlos Castaneda, who had written about shamanism, and kind of like Mexican mysticism. I know all about Carlos Castaneda. My dad was really into him, and I read some of those books. So he was trying to introduce like all this kind of mysticism into his work. And from 1979 all the way to 2007 was a different period. He was working on Blueberry. The writer died in 1989. And then the books were translated into English in 77, 78. So I guess that's when people start being more aware of him over here. Um, and then science fiction fantasy, it says he was working for the publisher Fiction, and it was a publication he had really been into as a child. L'Echo de Savant in 1974. Yeah, he's got a lot of work here.
Yeah, I mean, he was a maniac. I don't know if obsessive is really a justifiable term, but there,
And then he goes to Tahiti in 1983 to 84. That's the move, man. Why are we doing this wrong? All these artists, they just moved to Tahiti. Um, so he did have a run at Marvel Comics. He did the Silver Surfer in 1998, a cover. Moebius was
he
put
did the
out by
whole story. He did the whole story. He didn't just do the cover.
Oh,
He
okay.
illustrated with Stan Lee. Stan Lee and him wrote, and he illustrated a Silver Surfer.
Parable, yeah, by Stan Lee and Moebius.
Yeah.
They had also Epic Comics was also putting out his Airtight Garage stuff in the Epic imprint, so that was also working with Marvel. And Archie Goodwin was convinced to publish his stuff, just like serialize it. They did his Blueberry Western, yeah. So they definitely cashed in on him. It was a 2-issue Silver Surfer miniseries, Silver Surfer Parable, written by Stan Lee, published through the Epic imprint 88 and 89. His first time working under the Marvel method. He wins the Eisner Award, and So, and the movie Crimson Tide, it says the miniseries won the Eisner Award for the best limited series in '89, and Moebius's version was discussed in the 1995 submarine thriller Crimson Tide by two sailors pitting his version against those of Jack Kirby, the main character played by Denzel Washington, emphasizing the Kirby one being the better. I guess they mention him in the movie. He had a brother. Oh, Tony Scott was Ridley Scott's brother, who's written that in the dialogue as an homage to the artist on behalf of his brother Ridley Scott, and a Moebius admirer. And also Quentin Tarantino was also an admirer. So he worked for DC in Hardware number 49, 1997, and Static, 1997. I think that was the Millennium imprint. He did some trading cards, taking up residence in California, and then his later work brings you from 1990 to 2012. I guess in the later day. And
Well, he always had an agent. Like I said, the guys that put this together was his agent representation here. I believe the same was true in Paris. So he wasn't. He was a professional illustrator. I think it comes from the top down. In the way back then it was structured. So comics, though, in Europe is just a part of illustration. There's no separation. And I think what maybe gives it a difficulty less now, I would assume, back in, like, let's say the 80s and 90s, for people to accept him, is that until the fall and crash at the late 90s of American comics, Marvel and DC and Image basically imploding, it's all superhero driven. All the independents and the underground, which is where we always maneuvered through, in and out as illustrators, if you will. He's he's able to translate words, thoughts and ideas, dreams to images. And I really do believe in the most spectacular and perfect way that is very few people can equal him. And I think when you do think who can equal him, I think Katsuhiro Otomo for Akira is probably an equal, but there are very, very few people. Winsor McKay would be in that same. It's an ability that was taken as a skill and honed and honed and honed, um, and it's just amazing. And just hearing, I didn't know, and I'm going to start tracking down the movie adaptions of the westerns that he turned into graphic novels, because I'm very obsessed with that right now. As I've said before, I'm reading. Let me grab it here.
This
I'm
is really
reading
interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
the Russ Myers documentary, and I'm interested in his storytelling. Is really what I'm interested in. The big boobs, the exploitation, the B movie. Okay. But he had a very magnetic personality that met an industry that's completely based on storytelling. So and that's why I think people end up falling into comics or needing comics or running towards comics, is because they have this internalized story that they want to tell, whether it's theirs or their perspective, or they just want to be an illustrator of somebody else's. So, but I digress.
Yeah, I'm just checking out the movie credits, and he definitely was involved. It's a funny
Is he?
story. Well, he worked for Jodorowsky on Dune, and that led into where is it again? Yeah, so but actually, he was invited to be the designer for Tron, the Disney science fiction
Oh
movie.
yes, yes,
He
yes.
was requested, but he was already booked. It says that the Alien movie, he came on board because he was introduced to Ridley Scott through Jodorowsky's team, and he only worked on the pre-production, designs for Alien for 2 weeks, but nonetheless, his designs for the Nostromo crew attire and the spacesuits were almost exactly adopted by Ridley Scott and appeared on screen as designed.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
also Blade Runner and um, one of his graphic novels was adapted into a movie later on, but that it looks like a European project. So yeah, it says that his participation in The Fifth Element, character designs for Space Jam, just on and on. So what a career!
Right.
So
So I
great
just want
applause.
to finish up my little segment with free fall. What I have in the back of this is I cut out the majority of issues of heavy metal that I had years ago in the 80s. I've got Incal, John DeFool, the Airtight Garage. But this is really at my core. When I read Arzak for the first time in Heavy Metal Magazine, the bell went off. And I love silent comics. It's like the G.I. Joe Snake Eyes issue where he rescues Scarlet, and goes up against his brother, Storm Shadow. That and it's not easy to do, and this really exemplifies the type of storytelling in a wordless way that you got to match if you're going to be successful when it comes down to it. So it's a guy running through some big vegetation. He ends up falling in the hole, falls through this like membrane into a cave. He's falling through this cave, comes to, wait a second. Is that this way? I think it's this way. Yeah. Then it falls through the membrane. Then, now he's falling through here, smashes through another one. Here's a guy who's like in a shaft, an elevator or some type of weird thing, passes through. Oh, no. Wow, man, I have these all out of order. Oh, yeah, it goes this way now, right? Yeah, because he passes these. No, wait a second. Here we go. Oh, how does this work? Yeah, that goes like that. And then passes through the membrane. Here's all these alien-looking guys, pulls out some note, reads it, keeps falling, runs into this guy. This guy ends up checking something. It says free fall, makes a note. And then as he lands, there's an American Indian doing a sand painting, and boom, it's a nuclear explosion. So it's simple, but the kineticness, the kind of emotional connection that he's able to make in a matter of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages is, to me, astounding. And of course, it has that outer limits kind of like O. Henry type of storytelling, which is really at the heart of me. But that's what I have to in the way of sharing in Moebius. I don't want to keep us. We're already at 40 minutes there. And we want to give you some time to share. All right, Jake, I think this is where we're at. And I think people should be getting a copy of this, The Art of Moebius. It's a great one for the collection. It's very inspiring. We usually do a follow-up with your book, but we're going to let you have a good 35 minutes of your own. And with the comic, How to Draw Comics comic with John Byrne and John Romita. But other than that, do you have anything to give these people before we bust out of this one?
No, check us out next time, and don't forget to check in with Turbo Pit Fighter, our making of series, where we're currently doing the lettering, but you can go and binge all the episodes you want on our other channel.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'll see you in the next video.
All right, pal.